We're going to be talking today about feedback, and we're going to cover the importance of giving feedback. We're going to cover the techniques for providing effective feedback. We're going to talk about the feedback model. So I'm going to introduce the feedback model. And then we're also going to talk about the engagement model and the grow model. Now, the main the main concept we're going to be talking about today, it's going to be the feedback model. This is going to be the main tool I'm going to give you. So I'm going to spend most of the time talking about this. A lot of you in this call already know this. You've been introduced to this in the past. You've heard about it. Some of you might never seen this before. So I'm just gonna go like I'm just gonna pretend nobody knows. And we're gonna talk about the feedback model. Again, at the end, you can, give me an example. We can do a role play if you want, but the feedback model is where we're going to concentrate. And then briefly, I'm going to touch on the engagement model, the growth model, just so you know what it looks like. But these are more like advanced models that you can use. But the feedback model is what you should know by memory. This is something that you should know, you should memorize it, you should do it with your eyes closed, and this is the one that you should be practicing every day. And then once you get this, when you have it down, then you can move on and use the other two. All right, but just for the purposes of this class, I'm going to introduce all of them. It's a lot of content, because this is not something that you just see one day and become proficient at it. Again, this is something that you have to practice. So you're gonna have this information. I'm gonna be emailing the link to this class and the PowerPoint. So it's on you to go back and see it again, look at it, practice it, memorize it. All right. So if you Google what feedback is, you're probably gonna get a definition similar to this. Feedback refers to the process of providing information or opinions about something or someone's actions, work, behavior, or performance, often with the intent of guiding future improvements. Now, the way we use feedback in our day to day is usually to correct a behavior, to, tell somebody that they're not supposed to be doing what they're doing, um, to help them improve. Feedback can be positive or negative, right? We're going to concentrate today in effective feedback. So I want you to, you know, think about the word effective, because you can give feedback to somebody and be ineffective, right? You can say something to somebody, you can say, hey, you need to, improve this. It doesn't mean the person is going to do it, right? And very often as leaders, we wonder why we tell people what to do and they just don't do it. I mean, is it so hard? Well, it is. And I'm going to tell you why. So, feedback. Why is feedback important? So like I said before, we can course correct behavior. So if you see something that needs correction, then you can tell the person, and then that behavior can, be corrected. It's like a child. I always give this analogy. It's like a child. If you have a child that's doing something that they're not supposed to be doing, what are you gonna do? You're gonna tell that child, stop do that, stop doing that, you're gonna correct their behavior. Because what happens when you don't do it? Then the child's gonna misbehave, and they're gonna keep doing that behavior over and over again. So it's important when somebody's doing something that you need them to change, you have to have a conversation with that person. Now, this is very important. You want to correct the issue on the spot. You don't want things to pile on. This is what I see happening all the time. As people, we tend to avoid confrontation. Okay. I have not met somebody that loves confrontation. People usually avoid it, right? So you see something small happening and you're like, for example, an employee coming 10 minutes late. And you're like, it's only 10 minutes. I'm not gonna say anything. I'm not gonna be, I'm not gonna make a big deal out of this. And then it keeps happening. And now it's not 10 minutes. Now it's 15 minutes. Now it's 20 minutes. And you don't say anything. And then you swallow, you swallow, you swallow. And what happens? One day the employee comes saying 45 minutes late and you just blow up. And to the employee, like, you're crazy. Like this is coming out of nowhere because you've never mentioned this before. But to you internally, you've been putting up with this behavior for far too long. So now you start thinking to yourself, this person, they don't respect me. They don't appreciate me. Everything I do for them, everything I let slide, and look how they repay me. So you create this internal narrative in your head, and then you're just done. And by the time you say something, you're already done. Mentally, you're done with the person, and then you just blow up. And then it usually never ends well. But you have to understand that on the other side, you allowed this behavior. So the person, this is human nature, right? When you allow something, people are usually going to take advantage. It's just, the way people are. They see that they come in late 10 minutes, nothing happens, nobody says anything, and they're going to keep doing it. It's just the way it is. So the best thing is to have the conversation once you spot the issue. It's better to correct a small issue on the spot than a big issue later on, because it will become a big issue if you don't talk about it, if you don't, say something about it. And finally, feedback is extremely important because it facilitates learning and growth. When you're giving feedback to somebody, it's because you want them to grow, because you care. Otherwise, you wouldn't be giving them feedback. And it's important that when you're having those feedback conversations, that you explain to the employee, to the person, that you are doing this because you want them to grow, because you want them to get better. Feedback should not be negative. Feedback should be constructive. This is, you know, this is a behavior that needs to change. This is why it needs to change. And this is the benefit for you, basically. Now, we have to remember something. Effective feedback, and again, pay attention to the word effective. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about effective feedback. Effective feedback is immediate, specific, and non-judgmental. Again, you see the behavior you want to change, and you have that conversation immediately. You do not wait. You don't give feedback 3 weeks later. You don't say, oh, well, the case manager didn't call a client back. That's not good. I don't have time now. I have too much to do. I'm going to have a conversation later. And then 3 weeks pass by, and then you forget to have the conversation. Never happened. And then you have an issue, same issue with the same case manager again. You're like, I should have that conversation. So don't put it off. This is extremely important. You have to give feedback on the spot. You have to be very specific. Don't be vague. Don't be general. Just be very specific. This is the issue. Let's talk about it. And non-judgmental is very important. Now, we tend to get emotional about things. We take things personal, right? Especially when we put so much time and effort into training somebody. And when the person does something that violates our expectations, when there's a gap in expectations, we get hurt, we get disappointed as leaders, and we're like, how could you do that to me? And it's very easy to fall into the trap of engaging in a conversation, in a feedback conversation, in a very judgmental way, like, oh, you did this, you did this wrong, how could you? The employee, they're just not going to listen to you. you know that feedback is not going to be effective when you put all your emotions into it. That's why part of the tools that I'm going to give you today will help you have that conversation in a non-judgmental way, so it's actually effective, so you actually can get something out of the conversation and you can actually see a difference in behavior. Now, what's really important about feedback, effective feedback, is that you need to focus on the results or behavior rather than the problem or the mistakes. So again, let's put an example. Let's say a case manager gets a discharge, right? An intake case manager gets a discharge. And then when the manager starts looking at the case, realizes that, the case manager didn't call the client back. The client called multiple times and the calls were never returned. That's a big problem, right? Because we're losing clients because the case manager is not calling back. Now, when you sit to have that feedback conversation, you're not going to focus on the discharge, right? You're not going to focus on because you did this and we got a discharge and we cannot get discharges anymore, so you have to change so we don't get discharges. You're not going to have the conversation. The conversation should be the behavior you want to change. What's the behavior? The case manager not calling clients back. That's what you want to address, right? Because you already got the discharge. You cannot go backwards. That already happened. But you want to make sure that that behavior gets corrected so it doesn't happen again. So you're going to, have that conversation and you're going to talk about, you know, what can you do to make sure that you can call your clients back. You want to change that. You want to make sure that the case manager understands that, he needs to call all the clients back and it needs to happen. You know what I mean? But again, behavior, that's what you focus on, the behavior, the results, not the problems. So we have to understand that we work with people, right? And people are not machines. They're not little robots. They're people. And we have to understand that work is logical, right? Everything about our work is very logical. We have a lot of systems and processes, everything makes sense, everything is very, black and white, everything is very logical. However, people are psychological. So sometimes you assume people should know certain things, but never assume. Because again, people are not logical, they are psychological. And because people are the ones doing the work, performance is also psychological. Because people and performance, that's intertwined. So we have to understand the psychology behind performance, the psychology behind feedback to make sure that we can increase performance. Because in this setting, most of the time, we give feedback to people so they can improve their performance, they can correct the behavior, right? That's usually the two reasons why we give people feedback. So again, very important. Performance and people are psychological. Now, when giving feedback, we are going to always, always, always focus on these three things. Every conversation you have, you should be sharing your intentions, describing the choices, and explaining the consequences. So let me give you an example. We were talking about the case manager that didn't call the clients back and got a discharge, right? So when you sit down with that person to have a conversation, you're gonna say, okay, we are here because this happened. And I want to make sure that we can, you know, get into an agreement as to how you're going to move forward and this is not going to happen again. So you're sharing your intentions, right? Like, why are we here? Why do I want to get out of this conversation? That should be the first part. Now you describe the choices. In this case, the choices is either you pick up the phone on the spot and you talk to the client, or you call them back the same day. Those are your choices in this situation, in this example. And then the consequences. What are the consequences if you don't do what you need to do? Then you can get a write-up, you can even get terminated. There are consequences for you violating expectations. So these three things, as long as you keep this structure in every feedback conversation you have, then you will have an effective conversation. Again, we're talking about effective feedback. I'm going to say that word a lot. Effective feedback. Now, going back, accurate, timely feedback is key to any performance improvement effort. When you want people to perform, you have to be able to give them effective feedback. The feedback needs to be accurate. So you have to get all your facts, right? And you have to give the feedback on the spot for you to see an improvement in performance. Again, it's very, very common for leaders to give feedback about performance. This is one of the most common forms of feedback. Now, talking about performance, when you give effective feedback, you are increasing performance, right? A couple of things you need to take into consideration. Repetition is the mother of skills, right? You have to repeat things over and over again. And I know it's annoying sometimes, yes. But again, going back to the analogy of a child, when you want a child to learn something new, you don't say it once. I mean, if you say it once, it's not going to happen. You're going to say it multiple times. You say it over and over and over and over until it sticks. It's the same with people. Again, people are psychological. You, most of the time, will have to repeat the same thing over and over again for people to understand it, to get it. Because sometimes they are hearing you, but they're not listening to you. So it is important that repetition is key uh, if you want to increase performance in your team. Now, we want to create a culture of performance. And to create a culture of performance, you have to get very, very proficient at giving effective feedback. And finally, you have to focus. I mean, the focus is the key principle of performance. So for people to perform, you have to be focused. And you see this in athletes all the time. So when you see the athletes, when they're in the zone, they're amazing. Like in baseball, in soccer, football, you know. And have you ever seen an athlete that's amazing, but they go through a bad period, like a bad season, and they do terrible? Clearly, it's not the skills because, if they got to play pro, it's because they have the skills, right? So skills is not an issue. Capacity is not an issue. They're capable. I mean, they're played amazing in the past. So what happens? What happens that they all of a sudden have this bad, performance, uh, weeks, months, season? What's going on with this person? And it's usually because they're not focused. There is a lack of focus. So there's a lot of interference going on. So when you speak to sports psychologists, they study this a lot, and they basically tell you that interfering is the enemy of focus, right? So this is the opposite. So in order for you to perform, you need to be extremely focused. When you're not performing or when your team is not performing, it's because there is interference. As a leader, your job is to remove interference. You have to see what's going on, why this person is not performing. Again, if you have a case manager, if you have a manager, whatever, like an employee, if they got the job, it's because they have the skills, right? They've been performing the job, they've been doing good, and all of a sudden they're not performing. Something is happening. And again, it's not skill, it's not capacity, it's interference. So you have to identify what the interfering is and then remove it. That's how you focus them. And when you focus people, they perform at the highest. So give you the best performance. So what increases performance? Capacity and knowledge, right? You have to have the capacity, you have to have the knowledge and focus. And then what decreases performance? When you have interference. And again, why are we talking about this? We're talking about interference because when we give feedback, one of the reasons we're giving feedback is to remove the interference. And the tools that I'm going to give you in the next few slides is to remove interference. By giving effective feedback, you are also removing interference. Therefore, you're increasing the performance of the individual, of the team, etc., etc., etc. So what happens when you have interference? You get analysis paralysis. I think we all been there, done that, right? You have a million things to do. You don't know what to do first. You're so overwhelmed that you just don't do anything. And then you get paralyzed. Also, the pressure to perform, you know, you need to meet your KPIs. You need to do X amount of demands. You need to, check some X amount of releases. You have to do depots. You have to do this. You have to do that. And you're like, it's a million things. And also you feel like you're getting pulled in a million directions at once. Like you don't know, like you there's a million things to do. You don't know what to do first. You're paralyzed. You have too much pressure on you. All of this creates interference. And that's why people that are very capable lower their performance, right? Because they feel like this. And again, as a leader, your job is not to tell people what to do. Your job is to help them, guide them, remove the interference so they can focus better. You cannot just tell people, well, this is the job. You got to do what you got to do. No, I mean, if the person has interference, what's going on? Sometimes the interference is at home. Sometimes people blame work, right, for the stress, but they might have an issue in their personal lives that's causing the stress, but they're not aware and they are, showing all that stress at work. It could be health issues for you, for your family members. It could be problems with your spouse. It could be financial issues. That's things that can be happening in your personal life that is causing all this stress. And in your mind, you're like, it's work. These people are like, they're putting too much pressure on me, and that's why I feel like this. So as a leader, if you have a relationship with your people, right? And this is why, by the way, you are not supposed to have more than 7 direct reports. For example, my team is big. The production team is huge. It's almost 100 people. I do not talk to 100 people. It is impossible for me to have a quality relationship with 100 people. That's, insane. So what do I have a leadership team. And those are the people I communicate on a daily basis. So my pod leaders and my team leads, those are the people that I'm just like, on a daily basis, and hopefully they can pass that information down. I need to know my team. I need to know the people I work with closely because I need to understand where the interference is coming from. I need to know if the interfering is coming from home or is coming from work. It could be, maybe everything is perfect at home, but you really get stressed at work. And so it is my job as a leader to sit with that person, understand what the interference is and work with them to create a plan. So if you're like all over the place, right? I need to sit down because maybe it's a time management issue. Maybe they just need to structure their day better. So we can, go through all the tasks together. We can put them in order of importance, priorities, and we can work together to create a plan for the day, for the week, and for the month. So the employee feels more at ease. Again, this is my job as a leader. I cannot just tell you figure it out. That's not how it works. How do we get there? With a lot of feedback. Hey, I've noticed that you're doing X, Y, and Z. Why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? All of that is feedback, right? So extremely important. That's why I put this concept here about interference, because as a leader, you always, always, always have to understand what the interference in your team is. Now, remember, and I said it in the first class, and I'm going to say it again. Not everybody in this call is in a leadership position. But leadership, it doesn't have to be only for managers, or, you don't have to have a title to be a leader. You can do this with everybody. And again, the tools that I'm going to give you, you can use at home too. Because you can be a leader in your church, you can be a leader at home, and you can be a leader at work, regardless of whether you're in a position of power or not, regardless of whether you have a title or not. Feedback, this is something that you can give to your superiors. You can give feedback to your boss. You can give feedback to your coworkers, and you can give feedback to the people that you lead. Feedback is something that we use all the time. This is something that we use on a regular basis. Okay, so let's go to the tools. Let's go to the feedback model. Before I get there, again, this is extremely valuable, extremely, extremely valuable, but it's only valuable if you use it. My personal experience with this, when I was first introduced to the feedback model, I said, that doesn't work. That's an American concept. We're here with there's a lot of Latinos here. That doesn't work. This is not going to be effective. But I forced myself to try it because I hate learning something and not applying it, because then I feel like I just wasted my time. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to give it a go. And I tried it. In my first feedback conversation, it worked. It was like magic. And I'm like, oh my God, this thing is amazing. It's magical. It actually works. If you practice it, if you put it into practice, if you really, really use it, if you're intentional about using this tool, it will change your life. You know, those of you that know me very well know that I'm a big fan of the feedback model. I make people use the feedback model all the time. So, I don't want to hype it up too much. I think I am. But again, this is gold. If you're in a leadership position, or if you want to be in a leadership position, this is something that you have to know, like, by memory. So here it is. Ta-da! All right. So the feedback model. So it's very simple, very, very simple. It has 4 steps. You first have to ask for permission. You have to empty their cup. You have to build what they said, build on what they said. And then you have to endorse what you agreed with and then create a way forward. Sounds simple, right? It really is. Now, just to go through this, like I'm gonna, use the same example that we were talking about with the case manager getting the discharge, just so I can give you like an actual example and it makes a little bit more sense. So let's say that you as a supervisor, you need to have a feedback conversation with this case manager. They just got a discharge and you notice that they were not returning the calls and you have to sit down with the person. So the first thing is that you always have to ask for permission, right? So you can say, hey, I have some feedback that will be useful for you. It involves blank, you insert the issue. So in this case, it involves you not calling clients back and causing clients to give us discharges. Is now a good time? So you ask, you're asking, like you're stating your issue, right? The issue that you want to talk about, and you're asking the employee if this is a good time to have the conversation. I've never had an employee say, no, this is not a good time. But if they do, you just schedule what the good time is. You just say, okay, when is a good time? And then you just schedule it. But 99.9% of the time, they would say, yeah, sure. And then you go to the next step. You have to empty their cup. Now, think about the person that you're talking to as a glass full of water. So let's say that you have a glass full of water, like full, full, full to the top, right? And somebody else comes with a jar full of water, try to pour into that glass. What are you going to do? You're going to be like, no, it's going to overflow. Don't do that. I'm going to get wet. Don't do that. It's the same concept. You have to empty their cup first because any feedback that you give them on a full cup, they're not going to receive. They're going to look in your eyes, they're going to nod, they're going to say yes, 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 but that does not mean they're going to do what they need to do, right? So just like the cup full of water, just think of people like that. So these 3 questions that I'm going to give you next, this is how you empty their cup, right? So you ask, okay, so again, going back to the example of the case manager not calling clients back. So, okay, um, you've called clients back before, right? So this doesn't always happen. So when you have called the clients back, when you were able to actually call the clients back in a timely manner, what has worked for you? And then they're going to tell you, they'll probably say, well, I, drop what I'm doing and take the call on the spot. Okay, what else? And that is the magic word, like the magic, phrase. What else? That's how you empty the cup. You ask the right questions and then you ask what else, what else, what else, what else, what else, until they tell you, no, that's it, nothing else. I don't have anything else to say. Remember, you don't ask anything else because when you say anything else, you kind of like cutting it there. You're like, that's like an ending question, like, okay, let's move on. So you never say that. You always say what else, what else, what else until they have nothing else to say. So, they say, oh, I, drop everything I'm doing and get the call on the spot. Okay, what else has worked for you? I write it down and then I call my client before the end of the day. What else? Um, I, put a sticky note on my computer to make sure that I don't forget. What else? And then again, you keep going until they're like, no, yeah, that's it. Nothing else. Then you move to the next question. Where are you getting stuck? See how you start with the positive, right? You don't start with the negative. And when they know what you want to talk about, they might be inclined to say, no, what happened is they want to like excuse themselves and tell you the why they're getting stuck. You have to control the conversation. And you say, no, it's okay. We're going to talk about that later. Tell me what's working first. You redirect them back to the question, because their initial reaction will be to excuse themselves or to give you that reason. So anyways, you finish with what's working. They tell you they don't have anything else to say, and you move on to where are you getting stuck? Okay, where are you getting stuck? What do you mean? Yeah. When you're not able to call your clients back, what's, stopping you from doing that? Where are you getting stuck? And they'll probably say something like, well, I have too many cases. It's very hard to call all my clients back with all the cases I have. What else? Um, I get too many calls in a day. I mean, this is not realistic. It's not realistic to call clients back. I mean, sometimes I get like 20 calls. How am I going to be able to return 20 calls? What else? I need to focus on submitting PVPs and demands. I mean, you want me to meet my KPIs, right? So how can I call the clients and submit my demands and my PVPs? What else? Again, you're gonna have the urge to jump in and say, you're wrong. That's not right. That's not true. But you're not gonna do that because, we're talking about, we're giving effective feedback, right? So, and again, it's non-judgmental. So you're going to, suppress your urge to jump in and say something, and you probably have the answer already. You probably are dying to tell this person what to do. It's very simple. Like, why do I have to go through this? Just call your freaking clients back, just write it down and call them back at the end of the day. So you probably have the answer, but that's not the point. The point is that you have to allow the person, the employee, or whoever you're doing this with, to reach that conclusion, that solution on their own. Remember, a bad plan that you made, it is 1,000 times better, and you're more likely to commit to it than an amazing plan that somebody gives to you. People hate to be told what to do. They hate it. Unless they're like imperial, worldview, like we're talking the last class, and they respect people that tell them what to do. But this is not the majority. In corporate America, you're not going to have a lot of those people that love to be told what to do. It's very rare. So for the most part, people don't like to be told what to do. So that's why we're doing this, feedback model. So the employee can get to that solution on their own, and they can commit to that change in behavior. Okay, that's the point. So, anyways, you ask them where they're getting stuck. What else? What else? What else? What else? Until they say, "That's it. I'm done. Like I don't. That's all I'm getting stuck in." Okay. What might you do differently? This is the third question. The third magic question. Again, these three questions are magical. I swear. I promise. What might you do differently next time? And they probably say, I don't know. I mean, I guess I could write down the name so I don't forget. What else? They'll probably say something like, I guess I could like, create a calendar invite so I get a notification at the end of the day and I don't forget. What else? I guess I could use my OneNote and make sure that I, put it in my to-do list so I don't forget. Okay, great. So as they tell you, they're gonna tell you probably 20 things. And out of those 20 things, five are gonna be good and the rest is gonna be garbage. And when I say garbage, it means like, it's not great. But you're not gonna say that sucks, that idea is not good. You're just gonna, okay, what else, what else, what else? When you really like something they say, when you really agree, you're going to endorse it. You're gonna be like, oh, that's great. I like that idea. Okay, what else? Oh, that's good. That's good. What else? They say something you don't like, what else? And so you're going to guide them, right? And so at the end, if they if they when they finish telling you everything, if you still want to add something, you can say, hey, I love X, Y, and Z that you mentioned. I love these three things that you mentioned. Can I give you some feedback? And that's when you add, to whatever they said. I think it's a great idea that you want to do a calendar invite. I think that's amazing. I think that will work for you. Great, great idea. Writing it down in your to-do list. I think that's also it's a great idea. I also suggest creating a file in your Outlook, right? And creating a rule that all the chatters from client support go to that inbox. And then you can check them at the end of the day because, when client support will always send you a chatter to call the client back if they cannot reach you. So I think that will be, good idea. What do you think? And again, you're not telling them, you're suggesting something and you asking them if that's something that they're interested in. And they're like, yeah, I guess I could do that, you know. Again, they maybe told you everything that you wanted to hear and you don't even have to add anything. But you know, in the case that you have to add something, that's how you would do it. And so at the end, you know, after you have that conversation, it's time for creating a plan because we need to move forward because we just spent 10, 15 minutes of our time and I want to make sure that we have a plan so this doesn't happen again. So, okay. So moving forward, let's recap. Let's recap. So you said that you can create a calendar invite and that you can write in your to-do list every single client that you need to call back and you're committing to call them back before the end of the day. Is that correct? So, you know, you clarifying, you want to make sure that you understand and that you're not making an assumption. And again, this is one of the biggest mistakes we make. We make assumptions about what people think, what they're gonna do. You know what I mean? So no assumptions here. Very clear. Clear expectation is key. So you ask them, is that right? Have I understood you correctly? Yes. Okay. So you're telling me that you are committing moving forward to do those three things. Yes. Okay, so I am not going to have an issue with you moving forward about calling your client back because you're going to implement these three ideas that you came up with. Yes. Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's it. You see how that was non-judgmental, right? I probably wanted to like kill the person, like because you know how much it costs for us to get a lead, and you know we got to discharge just because you didn't do your job. That's how you know that's probably what I want to say. You know, just do your job. That's not effective. That's not going to get me anywhere. That's not going to make the person feel better. They're not going to want to change their behavior by having that kind of conversation with those emotions. But in this way, it's like no judgment here. I'm just here because I want you to get better. I want to make sure this doesn't happen and that we create a plan to move forward. I allow the person, you know, what we did is really a mental exercise. This is all psychology, by the way, right? It is a mental exercise for this person to get unblocked because they're clearly blocked. So they're getting it out. We emptying the cup, right? And once the cup is empty, we can talk about solutions. Solutions are not going to come until the cup is empty, right? So you guiding them through that process. That's why it's structured this way, right? And then they come up with their own solutions. So they are more likely to commit to it. That's all you're doing, allowing the person to, you know, arrive to the solution that you probably already know. And again, as leaders, we think a lot of the times that we need to have the answer, that our value as leaders is to tell people the answer. And if we don't have the answer, then we're not good leaders. And that will not be farther away from the truth. Your job is to guide them to the answer, not to give them the answer. You know, you coach them, you teach them, you give them feedback, and you guide them to that, you know, solution. You do not give the solution. All right. So again, it's super simple. The only thing you need to memorize is those three questions. What's working? Where are you getting stuck? What might you do differently next time? Those three questions are gold, are key. And feedback model should not take more than 15 minutes. A lot of the times I see people avoiding it because they think it's going to take forever. Yes, at the beginning it's going to take sometimes getting used to it. I remember my first feedback session, I wrote it down, I practiced it before. I was super nervous. I'm like, okay, I don't want to sound like I'm reading something, like I'm reading a script, you know, it's weird. But then once you memorize it, it just comes natural to you. As you know, you might be, you know, doing a feedback model on somebody, and they might be like, yeah, you're doing a feedback model on me. I see it. It's fine, you know, it's okay. This thing works, is effective. And what I try to do is that sometimes I just don't have the time to do the full feedback model. So sometimes, let's say, I just need to tell somebody this is wrong, don't do it again. You know, because I just don't have the time and I'm just passing by really fast. And what I usually do is, okay, so this happened. What are you gonna do differently next time? Okay, what else? What else? What else? Okay, so do we agree that moving forward you're gonna do X, Y, and Z? Okay, perfect. And that's it. I walk away. You see what I'm saying? So you don't have to always use the script. I do recommend it. I do recommend if you're having a sit down with a person to use the full script. But if not, using parts of it, you can use two out of the three, or to me, the most important is the last one, right? Because that's how you move forward. But again, use parts of it. But I do recommend that as you're getting familiarized with it, force yourself to do the full feedback model. I have people in my team that they would ask me, "Hey, I'm blocked. Do a feedback model on me." And I'm like, "Okay, sure," because again, it works. They don't want me to tell them what to do, but they know it works, and they just wanna get there, and they just need somebody to guide them there. So again, super powerful tool. Um, and that's the feedback model. So now this is the engagement model, and again, we don't have really like time to go through this in detail like I did with the feedback model. But this is, you use the engagement model, it's very similar, but it's more specific. This is when you have a goal as a coach. So, for example, let's say you have a reduction specialist that's not closing enough cases, right? So you have a specific goal, increasing the performance of that case manager. This is a great model to use in that situation. Like it's not really about giving the feedback that they're doing something wrong. It's different. You have a goal, and the goal is X. So this is something that you can use. State what you have, that you have an issue, request buy-in, be specific, request buy-in, share your reality, listen to the reality and, active listen, and then create a goal to move forward. Again, it's a very similar concept, uh, but it's used, when the coach or the manager has a goal. So really quick, like the way this will go is, hey, I have something I really need your help with. Can we discuss it now? And if not, when? Sure, we can talk now. Okay, perfect. My situation involves my perception of you not closing enough cases in your pipeline. So your productivity is actually decreasing. Is it okay to discuss now? You ask again. Yeah, sure. Okay. So I like to tell you how this appears to me. I want to understand how it appears to you. If I'm accurate, I want to work with you to change things. And if I'm not accurate, I want to understand why this is happening. Again, you're doing this because you don't want to assume. You might be pretty close to, what's happening, or you might know, but you don't know 100%. You cannot have an assumption in your head, and this helps you do that. So the way it appears to me is that you are not closing enough cases, that you are basically sitting on your cases and they're just getting stuck. So tell me. And then they will share the reality, and they're probably going to say, no, it's just that I have a lot of hospital cases and they take longer to turn around. I don't get clinic cases very often. So it looks like I'm not doing it, but I am. I'm actually have a pretty good rate of turning my hospital cases around. People usually take a month, and I take like 2 to 3 weeks. So it's actually good. Okay. So, and then you ask these questions throughout the conversation. So, what you're saying is, what you're feeling is, have I understood you correctly? This is to clarify, because again, you don't want to assume. You want to check your assumptions. And so you check with the person, and they also feel like you're listening to them when you use these questions. So I would say something like, so what you're saying is that you don't have a problem with turning cases around. You just have too many hospitals. Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying. And what you're feeling is you're feeling that, you're getting a little bit overwhelmed, you're getting a little bit frustrated because you're not able to close as many cases, but you actually, have a decent rate of closing the cases, right? Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So have I understood you correctly? What you're saying is that you do not have a problem closing cases. It's just that you have too many hospitals. The ratios of hospital to clinics is too high. If you're not right, they will correct you. So again, this is you're checking assumptions here. Okay, so now it's time to move forward. And how do you move forward? Okay, so just so I understand correctly. So moving forward, if I stop giving you hospital cases for the next 3 weeks and start assigning you only clinic cases for the next 3 weeks, you think you can move clean 50% of your pipeline? Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Okay, so is it okay with you if we implement this moving forward? Do you commit to get it done? Yeah, sure. You see? You see how, it's very similar to the feedback model, but it's a little different. You know what I mean? Because you have a goal. So that's how you use the engagement model. And again, I don't want to go too much into it because we don't have a lot of time, but you can go back, you can read it, you can practice it yourself. And then finally, the last one is the grow model. And the grow model is when somebody comes into your office, venting with an issue, this is the model that you're gonna use. So somebody comes in and they say, I don't know, I'm too overwhelmed. Somebody from intake, I'm too overwhelmed. I'm not picking on intake, I swear. Somebody from intake says, well, I'm too overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. I have a million things to do. And then you have to say, okay, what shall we talk about today? And they're going to, pour their soul into, what's happening. And okay, before we move forward, what if we don't reach this goal? Because you want to make sure that you understand what the goal is, because they're going to vent about a million things, but what is the real issue? What is the goal? Okay, the goal is that I don't think I'm going to be able to meet my KPIs this month because I have too much to do. What if we don't reach this goal in this conversation? What's going to happen? Well, if I don't figure out how to do all of this, I'm not going to be able to meet my KPIs. Okay, then you go into reality, and then you briefly, what's been happening? Tell me briefly. Don't go on and on and on. Just tell me what's been happening, and they're going to tell you everything that's happened. Okay, what have you done so far? What have you tried so far? And they're going to say, I've tried this, I've tried this, I've tried that. All right, tell me about the results, and then they're going to go on. Remember, every single question. What else? What else? What else? What else? Until they have nothing else to say. Okay, what's getting in the way? What are the obstacles? And they're going to tell you. What else? What else? What else? Okay, so you think your goal is realistic? What else? What else? What else? Then you go into the options, and this is you move into fantasy land. Fantasy land. This is a non-judgmental place. Okay, like so you basically say, okay, let's assume there are no rules. Forget about the rules of the word order. What will you do if there were no rules? And they're gonna tell you, and you're gonna say, okay, what else? What else? What else? What else? And then you go like, So if somebody else, right, would hear this conversation, what might they do to get your attention? Uh-huh. Yes. What else? What else? What else? Okay. If you were watching the conversation, right? Like if you were not you and you were watching this conversation from the outside, what would you recommend? What else? What else? What else? Okay. That's where you go. Would you like suggestions from me? They will usually say yes. And that's where you give your suggestions. Does any of these ideas interest you? Yes. What else? What else? What else? And then, okay, how might you go about it? And then they'll tell you, how they go about it. And then finally, it's just a way of moving forward. What's the plan? And then you use the following questions. Does this option interest you enough to take action? How would you go about it? What might get in the way? How might you overcome that? What and when is the next step? Again, I'm sorry, I'm going super fast, through this, but I hope you see the pattern. I hope you see the pattern that every model that I've shown you has a similar structure where you are emptying their cup, right? Allowing them to go through the process mentally, getting to stating the problems, solutions, and getting to an answer and committing to a plan at the end. So again, in these three cases, you use it to give feedback, you use it when you have a specific goal, and you use it when somebody comes to you with a problem, in those three instances. My recommendation is feedback model. To me, don't even go to the grow or the engagement until you memorize the feedback model and have used it 1,000 times. Once you've used the feedback model 1,000 times, then it's okay to use the other ones. So pretty much that's it about feedback. And let me see. Okay, that was a lot. Do you see me? Do you see me? Okay, I'm not sharing my screen anymore. Okay, great. Okay, so that was a lot of content. Again, it sounds simple, but when you have to put it into practice, it's not that simple. But again, if you practice, 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 you're gonna get great at it. Now, we have a couple of minutes left, so questions.
I have a question.
Okay.
Hi. I just have a question when it comes to the part where you were talking about interference. When
Mhm.
you know that the interference is coming from outside work, when you know it's home related interference, how do you manage that? How do you remove that interference, or how do you help that person get through that obstacle?
So having a conversation with the person, because again, sometimes they're not aware. So you have the conversation with them and they're telling you, and you're like, oh my God, this is their personal stuff going on. Like I can totally tell, but they're not aware. So creating that awareness first, so the person understands that they have an issue at home. And then I would do the feedback model. That would be my feedback. Your personal life, your issues in your personal life should not interfere with your work. So what has been working for you? What has worked in the past? Because you're not always stressed. You don't always have interference, right? We go through seasons. People fluctuate in their performance, in the way they feel, in the way they act, right? We're not perfect. We're not always the same. So you were not always like this. So in the times that everything was fine, that you were able to concentrate in your work and you were not allowing your personal life to interfere, what was working for you in those instances, right? So I walk you through that. Like I don't have the answer. You need to tell me, and then you're just going to go through that, and then okay, where are you getting stuck? So then you're going to tell me everything that's happening, all the bad things that are happening that you're getting stuck. Okay, what would you do differently? And that again, I am emptying your cup. I am taking that, weight from you, that burden from you. You might be blocked. You might be like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I have this problem at home and it's, creating too much stress and you don't even know. But by doing this exercise, you can, start unpacking, start, emptying your cup. And actually now you're in a state that you can arrive to the solution. So then the next question is, what would you do differently to make sure that your personal stuff doesn't interfere at work? So to me, feedback more, but obviously, like when you have those conversations with your team, you know what's going on. So knowing your team is very important. Remember that we spoke in the first class, you have to know your audience for the leadership styles. Same thing, you have to know your team. That again, that's why you should not have more than 7 reports. It is impossible to have that quality. Like, for example, I don't talk to you that much. I talk to your leader, right? So Gisele and I talk a lot. I don't talk a lot with you. Gisele needs to talk to you. You see what I'm saying? So, okay, I see Miner has a question.
I have a
Miner,
question.
yes.
Yes. How how can I have an effective feedback if the other person has a willing issue and not a knowledge issue?
What do you mean? Like they're not
I mean,
willing?
yeah, exactly. He doesn't want to do what he's supposed to do just because he doesn't want to.
Okay, then this job is not for that person. I mean, you have to again remember what we spoke about capacity and knowledge. So here's the thing: if you got the job, it's because we were able to identify that you have the capacity to do the job. But having the capacity doesn't guarantee that you're going to do the job. You have to have that drive, that willingness. So, yes, if you just don't want to do it, like you don't feel like it, then go. This is not the job for you. There's nothing you can do. You cannot, make people care. But for the most part, most people care. We think they don't because we don't know what's really happening. But most people actually care, and that's why we don't assume. We have to check our assumptions. All right. Jali Vera has a question.
Do you ever find yourself like implying uh the feedback method with a client? Like, have you ever, like before when you did have to speak to a client, let's say they're unwillingly wanting to go to therapy, or they just don't want to have a deposition, like, do you ever use that method?
I don't talk to clients that much anymore, but I would totally use it if I had to talk to a client. This is something that you can use with your spouse, with your clients, with your coworkers, with your parents. Like for example, and again, it's very effective. Let's say you ask your spouse to take the chicken out of the freezer. So when you get home, the chicken is defrosted and you can cook it, right? He forgets. What's your initial reaction? To scream. You have one job. It's so hard to get the freaking chicken out of the fridge to defrost. I mean, I'm gonna do all the work. I'm gonna cook it. You know, all you had to do was to get the chicken out of the freezer. Like that's usually how most of us will react, at least, But if you want to give effective feedback to your spouse, then you can do the 3 questions and you can say, where are you getting stuck? What has worked for you? Where are you getting stuck? What would you do differently? And have him commit to get the freaking chicken out of the fridge. So again, yes, you can use this with anybody, clients, people, anybody. This is a very powerful tool. So I recommend it 100%. And let us know if you use it, how did it go? All right, Sandy.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So my question would be basically, do you think that the feedback model will be changing depending on the leadership style? Like if the questions would be changing, or or it be depending on the representative that you're treating, or the agent that you're treating with, or no?
Yes. So no, the feedback model, it's a model, it's a script, and it has a structure. You can, like I said, you can change it a little bit, meaning like, oh, you're like in a hurry and you just want to do 2 questions and not the 3. I always recommend to do it properly if you want the proper outcome. But you can kind of like, switch it a little bit, but always the same. It's those 3 questions are key. Asking those 3 questions and the what else, what else, what else, that's key when giving feedback to somebody. Again, we're not perfect. Like for example, I know I should use the feedback model always. Do I always use it? No. Sometimes my emotions get the best out of me, and I'm just like, this happened. Why did it happen? What blah blah blah. But then you know what? And those what happens at the end, that I have to have multiple conversation with the same person, and at the end I have to use the feedback model, and I'm like, I just wasted my time. I had 3 conversations with this person, and I did the feedback model. I actually got a result. I should have used this feedback model from the beginning. So again, we're prolonging our own agony by doing this, by like resisting. Again, like when you trial a couple of times and you see the change and you see that you actually get the person to do what they need to do, you're gonna be like, this is crazy, this is magic, this is brujeria. It really works, it really works. All right, anybody else? One last question, we're out of time, so speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, so I'll see you next Wednesday at 9 a.m. We're going to be talking about accountability, which goes hand in hand with feedback, right? Now, remember, think about, force yourself to use the feedback model at least once this week, okay? If you don't use it, you wasted an hour of your time with me for no reason. Force yourself to do it. Okay, with a coworker, with a spouse, with a parent, with whoever you want, but do it. Pick an issue that you want to give feedback on and use it, all right? Deal? All right, guys. Thank you. Have an amazing day. Bye.
See you then. Bye bye.